if you're struggling with the idea that you were unloved and you find out you were, you can no longer stay in that same place.
It has been great to watch you reach out and build those relationships and see the healing and see you finally be able to accept, yes, I am lovable. But as we've had healing and as we've been very open and have built trust, it's just kind of been a journey that we've walked along beside you.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't scare me.
We have had a crazy couple of weeks here.
We have.
Yeah, Zach got married. That's the third oldest.
Yep.
Had a crazy time at his wedding. A little bit of a panic. A little panic for our family. A lot of disorganization. But we made it through. What else has happened over the last couple of weeks?
I wanted to say something.
Yeah.
I'm organized when it comes to these things.
Right.
But now that most of my kids are adults, I can't help it that they don't listen to me.
That is true.
So.
Yeah, a lot of not a lot of support for wedding time.
No.
Yeah. Brother-in-law went a little off the deep end. Very unhelpful. Man, what else happened at the wedding?
Same brother-in-law didn't get his shirt.
Yeah, same brother-in-law didn't get his shirt until the morning of the wedding.
The person doing the food forgot that there wasn't a stovetop at the venue.
Wow.
And showed up to cook her food.
One thing after another.
Yes, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of a night, to be honest, too. Very interesting. Zach and my brother got married 20. So no alcohol at the wedding. Very religious wedding as well, just because her family, our family, people who came. So the music was very interesting also. Like very old school, so not really quite a party either. It had a lot of really interesting energy going on.
It was a fun wedding.
It was a fun wedding. I didn't say it had a bad time. I just said it was a unique time for our family. What else has happened? But Dad's birthday is coming up today, so we'll have a lot of family time. I feel like something else happened over the last couple weeks. We had Sarah's birthday.
Dad started a new job. Sarah's birthday.
Oh yeah, so Dad is working with Sarah.
Dad is working with Sarah. Their desk is like 10 feet apart.
Yeah.
This is the first time in 32 years he hasn't been in education as a full-time profession.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, he had a cardiology appointment 2 weeks ago. And it was a month into the job. His cardiologist told him he was the healthiest he'd seen him in 10 years.
Wow. Guess we have the answer to it.
So educators out there.
Time to pack it up and go work in refugee reservicing.
Yes.
Yeah. Pack it all in. Yeah. Wow. What a time. And I feel like summer kind of flew by.
Yeah.
A lot went on this summer. We had Sarah on the podcast.
Yeah.
One of your more favorite episodes.
Sarah came for me.
You know, the real tension in the Eder home right now is that Sarah's clips on social medias do better than yours.
Yes, they do.
And it's a real fight in our home.
I'm not happy about it.
When Sarah has a clip that does really, really well. But then we also had Dad on the podcast. One of the more confusing episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one with Dad because I feel like it's just a story. It's just a story time episode.
Dad's the entertainer of the family.
Yeah, it's just a story time episode. But whew, what some stories are those? Those are, the Bible man story, the jumping out the window story. I feel like that one was just a peek into the history of us. And then we had our episode together, which I thought they all three of those episodes I feel like were really unique, different episodes for our show.
Yeah.
Because Sarah brought in that sibling dynamic. We got to kind of hear about our time together, which I think was more funny and full of, us being kids. The one with Dad got to bring in the dad element. Adoptive dads aren't usually out there that often.
Right.
You don't see a lot of adoptive dad content or a lot of adoptive dads talking about adoption. So I think that was really valuable to just hear his thoughts and also just have the fun side of it. But then you both together were a riot together. And so you guys had a fun time telling
Evidently we came for you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
You guys had a fun time telling some stories about me. I had to, I heard the comments. I got the messages.
I guess we egg each other on.
I guess that's what it is. I did feel like it was good, though. And I did feel like it was a really accurate picture. And that's one of the things that I'm enjoying about watching the show, even myself. like watching it back kind of when I'm reviewing them is like just the accurate portrayal that people are probably seeing of an adoptive family, maybe for the first time. I mean, ask yourself where you're seeing other adoption content where it's like feels very real.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, you are right. It is kind of a picture of our home because we
Yeah.
are a very jovial home.
Yeah.
Like we do pick on each other and
Yeah.
laugh a lot, and
Absolutely.
I would say 90% of the time laughing with each other.
Yeah,
We try
absolutely.
not to laugh at each other,
Yeah. And
but sometimes we miss that line.
yeah, we definitely miss that line. Probably sometimes more often than
Yeah.
not. But I think it's, I was thinking about like even like you and dad calling like me certain times me a roller coaster.
Yes.
And I was like, I wonder how many adoptive parents saw that. They were like, I get that 100%. Like,
A
you know
lot.
what I mean?
A lot.
I bet you a lot of them. But it's like, it's hard to find other people who will say that out loud. And
Yeah.
so I found the last kind of 3 episodes that we did like really kind of honest and fun.
Right.
And I think
Well,
they
yeah.
really showed a different side of us.
It did. And I think, again, part of our healing,
Yeah.
that we have developed trust enough in each other that we can say almost anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt sometimes.
Yeah.
And I can come to you and say, like, that was hurtful, and you can do the same, and we can apologize, and okay, we probably overshared and shouldn't have said it,
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we have built that kind of trust
Absolutely.
that we can joke around a lot, and yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so that's the plug.
Yeah.
Do all the work for healing with your child so that you can too start a podcast and
And
say
make fun of
everything
them.
publicly. If you do all the right things, follow all the right steps, you too can have a show whenever your child gets to be an adult.
Look,
Yes.
I am pretty sure the sibling chat is basically at my expense.
I don't think it's at your expense. I think just sometimes things come up.
I hear things about that sibling chat
Yeah,
sometimes.
sibling chat. Yeah, we can't say the name publicly, but it is not a good title. And it goes in there, and the picture of it is just Sarah smoking a cigarette.
Oh my God.
that's the photo of our
Like,
sibling
why do
group
I
chat.
need to know that? That's the thing about being
Yeah.
so open is that you guys
Yeah.
all tell me things about each other that I don't want to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Unfortunate, but would you rather know less or more? That's the question.
Sometimes I feel like I'd rather know less.
And so over the past couple weeks, I've also been, I feel like, sharing a lot more. I've been trying to engage online a lot more and sharing a lot more.
You have been more vulnerable. I've noticed that
Yeah.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's trying to find some new ways to
Mhm.
engage with parents on the daily. A lot of the stuff that I feel like I'm working on with identity is obviously to help with training, help have resources that you watch or read and stuff like that. But, sometimes you don't have a moment to pull out a book. Sometimes like a 90-second clip or a 60-second clip is like much more helpful. And so I've been trying to give different parts of my story that way, share tips that way. One of the ones that I feel like I shared a lot was about name changes.
Yes.
And so I talked about how I just really don't think that we should change children's names.
Mhm.
We don't talk about my name change that much, but it was such a normal thing for when I was adopted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I talked about name changes, and that one was people really enjoyed that one because I
Yeah.
think a lot of adoptees have had their names changed and felt the weight of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I almost regretted it immediately.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, at that time is what people did, and it's what we were advised to do by
Yeah.
the professionals.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I don't know what we would have done if we had not been advised to do that, but I do know that it didn't feel right
Yeah.
when we did it.
No, exactly. Yeah,
So-
here we are. And it did, and I think it's again, the hindsight is always 2020, so you always kind of look back with clearer eyes. But it's been nice to talk about that a little bit more, just and reflect on it a little bit myself. I actually, in my home office, I set up just like a little display, and so I have like the Shaping the Future award that I won this year. I have like the letter from the first business plan, and then I actually have my birth announcement that you found for me,
Okay.
which we didn't talk about that.
Yes.
You can share, but what did you find
Well,
when
I
you guys were
found just
cleaning
in the
out?
past year, I think I found a couple of things. I had made a little scrapbook for you of all the pictures and things that came with you.
Yeah.
So they were from before you lived with us. And so there was like a sonogram picture, and infant pictures and you had never seen that.
Yeah.
And I just remember I handled it horribly because to me it was exciting. It's like, "Oh, I found this." We for our listeners who don't know this, we had a house fire. And so I thought we had lost all of that in the house fire.
Yeah.
And so I found it within the last year. And
Mhm.
I remember I was so excited to have found it that I just nonchalantly handed it to you.
Yeah.
And like immediately, that was a very emotional thing for you.
Yeah.
Because I remember you just saying, like, I never thought I would see a sonogram picture of
Yeah.
myself, kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So that was a big deal. And
Mhm.
then I found your birth announcement
Yeah.
recently, just probably within the last month or so,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
last couple it hasn't been that
Yeah.
long. Yeah.
Found your birth announcement. And it is, and I don't understand. We had an open adoption,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, they still whited out any identifying information.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of
Yeah,
disappointing about the announcement.
it
But
is. But I think
yeah,
you can still see through it, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um, but
yeah,
to get back to the point, I actually hung that up there.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And so I've really valued having that birth announcement actually. I've thought that especially has been interesting to have. And also it's funny because it says my birth mom's name, so it's like it's a my birth mom's name, I think like celebration or something
Uh-huh.
like or production. No, it says my
Production, yeah, yeah,
it's blank, my birth mom's name, production. And I was like, this is some dramatic stuff that I would do.
yeah,
Like I remember thinking that. I remember like seeing that like I was like, I would too announce
yeah,
my child this way. Like this is my production.
yeah,
And so I found it really valuable to have that. And so that's why I like even just like I just hung it up there with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Because I was like, this is something that I like it feels I've been trying to make the home office feel like the mission and feel like the purpose. And to me, that feels almost like a memento of it, right? That is, that's an origin story part of it.
yeah,
And also the pictures, the scrapbook, I keep that pretty close.
yeah.
And then I also have the blanket from when I
Right.
was in foster care. It's
Yes.
the blanket that one of my foster moms made for me with my name spelled wrong.
Yes.
That has traveled with me everywhere. I've had that in every place I've ever lived,
Yeah.
from college to apartments. I've taken it with me everywhere. It's
Yeah.
actually the only thing that I know for sure that I've had since that day.
Yeah.
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 And so it's pretty
That's
crazy
cool.
how
Yeah.
these moments, I think especially when you have kind of parts of your history that you don't know everything about or it's broken or all these things, these certain threads that you can have that tie them together mean so much.
Right. I think one part of your story that's been a little bit difficult for us in conversation and for me to explain to you is how much my heart went out to your birth mom when we adopted you, um, and how much I knew it was a grieving process for her. And it's been, and I think you've never felt that, like you've never really maybe believed that. Um, and I think that finding these pictures
Yeah.
and the birth announcement and all, you've been able to say, okay, like
Yeah.
like there was a grieving process there.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's kind of brought to reality for you in a good way, I think.
Yeah.
That like I was loved,
Mhm.
things were hard,
Yeah.
and something difficult had to happen.
Yeah.
Or happened,
Yeah.
um and I think that I don't know, from observation it seems to have been a little bit
Mhm.
healing for you, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
And I mean, that's what me and Sarah talked about in our episode. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we talked about even reconnecting with some of my birth family and
Mhm.
hearing about
Yeah.
it being hard for them.
Yeah.
Not only,
Not that you want them to suffer,
yeah.
but it
Oh,
shows a love for you. That
yeah.
yes, yeah.
Well, and I don't even know if I'm going to get through this without crying.
Okay.
So, This Is Us episode. Have you seen the birth mother episode of This Is
Yes.
Us?
We always come back to This Is Us.
I've watched that episode no less than 12 times.
Uh-huh.
Like seriously, I've watched it on flights, I've watched it
Mhm.
nights, I've watched it back to back before. And when he's hearing about his birth mother and he's hearing about how like her partner is telling him like there just wasn't a day where
Right.
she didn't think about you.
Yeah.
And on her deathbed, one of the last things that she said was, I wonder where my boy is.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I just could not
Uh-huh.
move past that.
Mm.
And I think when you get these mementos from before you were adopted or even related to you being adopted that your birth family has put together, pictures, the birth announcement, or even the letter that
He was your uncle.
that my uncle
Yeah.
wrote, who was not that much older than me at the time, before I was adopted, what he wrote to you guys. Yeah, they just symbolize
Oh, that was a recent find too, wasn't it?
that was within the last 2 years.
Okay.
I've had that for a little bit now.
Okay.
But all these things, I think they take what are many times, at least they were for me growing up, feelings of like abandonment and like I just was forgotten.
Right.
And he just puts it back center to where like, no, you weren't. Like there was this whole experience for these other people happening out there. And though you didn't know about it, you couldn't see it. All these people had relationships with you. They had love for you. And the day that you were placed was also a hard day for them.
Yeah.
And that is.
I think I related it recently to you. It was like it would be like for your aunt and uncle at that time who were young themselves and who had daily contact with you.
Yeah.
It would be like Eden now being torn from all of his uncle's lives.
Yeah.
And how devastating that would be.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's to put into that perspective, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to
absolutely.
think.
It's a ton to think about.
Yeah.
And you don't feel that weight when you're growing up. You just feel the choice of it, right? You just feel all the things that you don't know. And it's always, was I wrong or did I do something bad? But when you look at it with all these when you get all this perspective and you have birth family telling you how hard it was for them and you have all these different things happening, you just can't look at it the same way. And there's a part of not being able to look at it the same way that's also hard. There's also like when you've lived so much of your life believing one thing. And I think that part of the reason that I've done so many things and pushed myself so hard is all because of that belief. Right. When you don't get to believe that anymore, you also have to find out who you are again. Yeah. And so that has been a really big part of this summer too, or this past couple months, is like finding out what parts of this are just the trauma and what parts of it are the purpose. Right. And so, I mean, it's and that episode of This Is Us, I think, centers that for me a lot. Yeah. Which is why I'll probably watch it again tonight. And so we'll see I might get an award from Netflix for how many times I watch that one singular episode. But I mean, it does start to change a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, now I've always been a huge advocate for birth mothers, and I've always said that once I'm not raising children anymore, that's kind of where I want my ministry to go because with both of our stories, I know that it was a very difficult thing. Yeah.
Our choices. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with that. That's why I love On Your Feet Foundation, which helps birth mothers, gives them support, resources. I love supporting their work. And it's real. And it's the story behind, like a lot of, in the guide I write in my advice for parents who are raising 18 and above kids, I say like, be there for your child as they uncover more about their story, right? Because that could be hard for them, right? Whether they find out good stuff, whether they find out bad stuff. And right, it's like, well, Micah might find out when he decides to search for answers, it might be different from what I find out, right? And both of those journeys, we're both going to need like love and support and moments just like we've had to have as the sonogram has come up, as the birth announcement has come up, as all these moments, I think they start to kind of stack. I think what's the best part about it for me is that if you're struggling with the idea that you were unloved and you find out you were, you can no longer stay in that same place.
Right.
And so it's like,
which
for
is
me,
good to move from that, but it is
great.
A transition. It's a process.
It's a huge transition. And like me working on that for years, now it almost felt like almost like a capstone of it. And maybe it's not finished yet, but it's like such a heavy in your face. It's like you've been trying to convince yourself and tell yourself like you're lovable, you weren't abandoned. Like you've been trying to tell yourself that, like, here's the proof. Yeah. Here's the proof that there were these people out there that wanted to know you, that wanted to love you. Yeah. And so
And we need better wording for it, but that's where the phrase
Yeah.
comes from adoptive parents who say, "Well, your birth family loved you and this is why they made that choice."
Right.
No child can understand that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what that means, it's not a great thing to say to a child. They can't understand that. But that's where it comes from.
Yeah, no,
Is
I get
because
that.
you do know
You know
what
that
when
there's an element of it.
yeah, there's a yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I believe that there's an element of it. There's all these factors that go into it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is hard for a child to hear
Yeah.
this is love.
Right.
Because then that also becomes an example and a definition of love for you,
Right.
which might associate love with loss.
Right.
Right. And I see that not only in myself, but also with
Right.
other adoptees who we associate love with people leaving. We
Right.
associate love with losing something. Or in many times, the case of our adoptive families, we associate love with the idea of losing ourselves, right? Me as a Black child in a white home, having to try to fit into that, right?
Right.
So I'm
Mhm.
losing this part of myself. And so when these ideas start to flow in our head as adults, we have no option but to act out of them because this is
Right.
how we've been conditioned to think about it.
Right.
We've been conditioned to maybe feel bad about ourselves. And I think that not only this is us, but I think also this reconnection point of my life, not only reconnecting verbally with my birth family, but also with these little mementos, has helped me move on from that.
Yeah.
And I've seen it play out in my relationships too, which has been nice. Like feeling like I'm able to let people love me
Yeah.
differently.
And this too goes back to like what are you capable and willing of? Are you willing to
Mm,
one day say
mm,
that I'm going to completely stand back and push him towards his birth family because
yeah.
that's the best thing for him.
Those are the
Um,
answers that are needed.
and for whatever reason, I have struggled with that when you were going through your angry face because
Right.
in my mind it was, well, he hates us. And so when he can, he's going to flee to his birth family and we're going to lose him.
Right.
But as we've had healing and as we've been very open and have built trust, it's just kind of been a journey that we've walked along beside you, and it doesn't scare me. As a matter of fact, when Micah was still in the hospital and I was I literally had his birth mother was in her hospital bed and they put a cot like that close, like I was like right beside her,
Yeah.
and she wanted me to stay in the room with her. And so I would do things like let her give him his first bottle and you can pick his going home outfit. And she kept saying, "Thank you, thank you." And I just finally said to her, "I'm not scared. I don't think you're going to run away with him.
Yeah.
I'm not, and if you were to change your mind, you're his birth parent. Like
Yeah.
I'm not scared right now."
Yeah.
And I remember her just saying, "Wow, I didn't think an adopted parent would ever say that."
Yeah.
Um, but that's truly how we've always felt. Like
Yeah.
we're not scared of you having a relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's been all of that to say I'm kind of getting off track here,
No, that's
but all of
perfect.
kind of
Yeah.
coming back around to say
Yeah.
that it has been, I'm going to cry now. It has been great to watch you reach out and build those relationships and see the healing
Yeah.
and see you finally be able to accept, yes, I
Yeah.
am lovable.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to rear its head again
Right.
because that's
Always
what
finds
trauma
its
does.
way.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so, but,
Yeah.
it has been the past year or so, really
Yeah.
beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's been beautiful to experience in a
Mhm.
lot of ways too. And not something that I really ever thought about experiencing
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that I never really thought that I'd have these experiences or have this information or have
Right.
this knowledge. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a gift.
Yeah. Mhm.